This episode is brought to you by Peacock. The new Peacock original documentary, Matthew Perry, A Hollywood Tragedy, dives deep into the beloved actor's rise to fame and his tragic death. 5 people, including Perry's personal assistant, 2 medical doctors, and an alleged Hollywood drug dealer known as the Ketamine Queen, were charged with conspiracy to illegally provide Perry with the ketamine. Explore the details of the case in this heartbreaking special, streaming now only on Peacock.
At T-Mobile, our critical mission is providing unparalleled 5G coverage for when connectivity is mission critical. Introducing T-Priority, America's best 5G network experience for first responders, even in times of congestion. More capacity, faster speeds, better coverage. T-Priority from T-Mobile, built for tomorrow's emergencies, ready today. Discover more at t-priority.com.
For qualifying organizations on eligible rate plans, coverage not available in some areas and may be impacted by emergencies.
You know, his wife talks about how they did search for me, and he, did want to know me and have a relationship with me. But I would love to hear that from him,
Yeah.
Just because that wasn't a feeling I ever got from my raised dad or my mom, and something I longed for, just to hear a parent say that.
Imagine spitting into a tube, sending off your DNA, and unknowingly turning your life upside down. For me and thousands of others, this is our reality. I'm your host, Alexis Auerselt. In July of 2021, I discovered that I am an NPE, someone who has experienced a non-paternal event. In other words, my biological father isn't who I thought he was. This podcast shares the journeys of people who were shocked by a DNA discovery, mostly through modern DNA testing. We're telling the stories of NPEs, adoptees, and donor-conceived people and their families. This is DNA Surprises. Welcome to the Season 4 finale of DNA Surprises. One of the things I've observed throughout my conversations within this community is that NPEs often explain away confusing details about their conception or birth stories because we trust our parents. We believe what we're told. In this week's episode, Sam explains how she always felt different from her sisters and raised father, but trusted what her mother told her. Eventually, she uncovers a mystery with multiple possible biological fathers. Sam shares how she found her biological father's identity and how she's connecting with her newfound family, even though he died just 18 months before she identified him. At the end of this episode, Sam joins me for an update on how her journey is going, so stay tuned. Thank you for sharing your story, Sam.
My name is Sam. I'm 33. I currently live in Northeast Tennessee, but I'm originally from Michigan. So growing up in my house, there was my mom, the man who turned out to be my raised dad, me, then 18 months after me was my sister Jamie, and then 18 months after her was my sister Terry. So there's 3 of us girls really close in age. Like me and Terry are almost 3 years apart exactly. And Jamie and Terry always shared a room. People always said they looked like each other and confused them for each other and just were super close. And at times it was nice having my own room, being the oldest, but at times I definitely felt left out and different. And then the other part of that is I actually had a different last name than them. I had my mom's maiden last name. They both had my raised dad's name. And I never remember asking about that until I was in 2nd grade. I had a teacher one day who talked about family trees and said, well, if you have a different last name than a parent, then obviously one of those parents isn't your parent. And so I went home that day, asked my mom, like, well, I have a different last name. Is he not my dad? His name was Steve. And it's like, is Steve not my dad? And my mom got angry, just like really furious. And was like, of course he's your dad. I can't believe your teacher would say that. And just the next day at school, the teacher had apologized. So I'm pretty sure my mom called and yelled at the school for that.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But they said the reason my last name was different was both of them smoked at the time. And he stepped out of the hospital to smoke a cigarette during labor and got locked out because it was the middle of the night and didn't sign my birth certificate. And of course, in 2nd grade, you have no clue how that works.
Right.
So you're just like, okay, I'm going to believe what my mom tells me because she's my mom.
So yeah, I mean, I guess as a child, that sounds plausible. So it's just, their excuse was that, like, he was there for your birth, but he just wasn't there in the room for the birth certificate. So they put her name.
Right. So I'm like, all right. And I asked my sisters this the other day because I was going over stories with them, and they said, oh, we just thought your last name was different because they weren't married. Because they got married shortly before Jamie was born.
Okay.
So they never heard the story that I was told. My raised dad treated me different than my sisters. He was a lot harsher on me than he was them. You know, I did everything I could to please him and to kind of gain that love. Like, I made sure my grades were great. My room was always spotless. I, never misbehaved in front of anyone. No one had a bad thing to say about me, in hopes that he would in turn love me the same way he loved Jamie and Terry. And nothing ever worked. It was just, he was always really different with me. And so that, of course, added to that feeling of being an outsider and being different than them. In 7th grade, my mom and him split up. He moved to Michigan. We stayed in Tennessee. And one day I was home alone. I just thought, is he not my dad? Because I wasn't sad that they split up. Like, most kids feel sad when their parents split up.
Mm-hmm.
I was actually happy about it. So I'm like, I can only feel happy, like, if he's not my dad. Like, this is a horrible thing to be happy they're split up,
Yeah.
I never told anyone because I knew my mom was going through a rough time, because now she's a single mom to 3 kids. We're, about teenagers at this point. He's in a different state. So I never asked her anything, just kind of left it at thought and just moved on. We eventually moved to Michigan. After that, I think about a year and a half, almost 2 years later, we moved to Michigan. We didn't move to the same area of the state that he was in. So we still didn't see him, much. They officially divorced when I was in 10th grade. And he actually started paying child support on Jamie and Terry, but not me. And I questioned my mom, like, well, why isn't he paying child support on me then?
Mm-hmm.
She was like, oh, well, you'll be 18 soon enough. There made no sense starting it. Didn't really believe that, but didn't really do anything with that. Just kind of let it sit there, because I'm like, okay. I was never close with my mom. And so I was really trying to get close with her during this time, because when we moved to Michigan, we moved into a 2-bedroom place. So I shared a room with my mom, and Jamie and Terry continued to share a room like they had their entire childhood.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was hoping this would be the time that me and her would get really close. It never panned out like that. So I never felt like I could go any deeper with questions with her, because I didn't think she would really reciprocate. And I felt, based on, that memory of her getting really upset about me asking about my last name being different, that she'd get really upset if I probed any deeper. So I kind of just left it there.
At this point, did you believe that he was your biological father, or were you, fairly certain, or were you still pretty unsure?
I was still pretty unsure, because the only evidence I had that he wasn't was my feelings. No one else had put any thoughts of that into it, or had said anything remotely that he wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
This was always, he's still your dad, and he's all your guys' dad. And so I just kept on going with that, just left it uncertain.
Yeah.
And wasn't sure. At the end of my junior year, for whatever reason, one day my mom picked me up from school, but not my sisters. And I thought about this. I cannot remember for the life why she picked just me up and not them. But I remember we're pulling out of the school parking lot. Like, we're still in the school parking lot. And I just asked her, I'm like, why is my last name different? Because, at this point, the story doesn't make sense anymore. I'm not in 2nd grade anymore. It doesn't make sense that he was locked out, of the hospital. My last name was different. And she said, well, truth is, he's not your dad. She's like, I had the one night stand with this man named John. He was married. And when him and his wife found out about you, they didn't want you. So I stayed away. But that's who your real dad is. I didn't ask any questions. I just like, okay. Because I'm a processor, so I'm not quick on my feet when it comes to thinking about things.
Mm-hmm.
I take a time to process how I feel about them. I was like, okay. And then I just remember the next 2 weeks crying, like, all the time. Never around her or anyone. Like, anytime I was alone by myself or like in the shower, I would just be sobbing, because it was just such a shock.
Yeah.
I mean, part of me knew, but it's still, at that moment, it's like, oh, I really am different than Jamie and Terry, my sisters, and I don't know who my dad is. And I went through this childhood, thinking that my raised dad, but thinking that he didn't love me as much as my sister because something was wrong with me. Or it turns out he's not even my dad. Mm-hmm. And so I had lots of self-esteem issues just based on my relationship with my raised dad. And then this just added to that. I did tell my boyfriend at the time, who's now my husband. I did tell him, and he didn't really think much of it. He only had brothers, so he doesn't understand like the mother-daughter relationship or even the mother-son relationship. He's like, okay. He didn't realize it was a big deal until one day we were hanging out, and I did cry in front of him about it. I just randomly, we were watching movies with friends, and I just burst into tears. And he's like, oh, so this is a big deal.
Yeah.
He's just like, he's like, sorry, I didn't realize it's such a big deal. I'm like, I didn't realize it's such a big deal, but I just keep crying about it, and I don't know what I feel. And I mean, I hadn't talked to my raised dad at years at this point. It just kind of sat there like that. Now, this was back in 2007 when I found out that my raised dad wasn't my dad. Mm-hmm. And so at this point, commercial DNA testing isn't a thing. That doesn't come out until 2012. At least Ancestry didn't really have money to do anything with trying to find my dad. Never really talked to my mom again about it, because once she told me, that seemed like that was all she wanted to say. Like, she was done with the conversation. I told you, let's move on, and didn't want to bring it up again. So I kind of kept to myself. I didn't tell a whole lot of people because I didn't want my mom to feel shamed about having a one-night stand. As I've read in like a lot of the NPE groups, we tend to protect our moms.
Right.
And I didn't want anyone to like shame her for having one night stand,
Yes.
I sat on for years. Once I finally got Facebook, I would try searching for my dad. But he has like one of the world's most common names. So hundreds of people would pop up just in the state of Michigan alone. And I, of course, had no pictures, what he looked like. I didn't have an age. I just had a name. And I'm like, this is not helpful at all. And it really wasn't until 2019, so 11 or 12 years after I found out, that I really made any headway in finding him. I get a Facebook message one night. It's Valentine's Day. Me and my husband are coming back from a concert. And I get a Facebook message from this guy saying that he believes his brother is my dad. I read it and I just kept reading it over and over. And I showed it to my husband. And I'm like, some guy just messaged me that his brother is my dad. He's like, oh, is it John's brother? I'm like, no, John's name's not even mentioned in this. These are two completely different names. Mm-hmm. I'm like, I don't know what to do. So the next morning, I text my mom, I'm like, hey, can you call me? She'll go, yeah, anytime after I get off work. I'm like, no, this needs to happen now. Like, I need to talk to you now. So she calls, and I just started, like, saw it ring, and I just started crying. So I handed the phone to my husband because I'm like, I can't do this. You got to ask her. And he's like, hey, Sam got this message from this guy claiming that his brother is her dad. But it's not the name she was given. Is there any weight to this? Should we ignore it? And she's like, well, there's actually a possibility it could be him. I don't actually know who her dad is. Wow. There's 3 different possibilities. This brother could be one of them. But he has passed away. So I don't really know.
So this is 12 years after the fact.
Yeah.
Where you were
12 years after the fact.
You were given the name of someone. You believed this was your father, but you kept it a secret to protect your mom. Did your raised father know that you were not biologically his?
This episode is brought to you by Honda. Introducing the all-new, all-terrain Honda Passport Trail Sport, the most off-road capable Honda Passport Honda has ever dreamt up. The Passport features increased ground clearance, roof rails on all trims, and available specially developed all-terrain tires. And you'll stay comfortable with tri-zone climate control and available features like heated and ventilated front seats and a panoramic moonroof. Learn more at honda.com/passport.
Support comes from ServiceNow. We're for people doing the creative work they actually want to do. That's why this ad was written and read by a real person and not AI. You know what people don't want to do? Boring, busy work. Now with AI agents built into the ServiceNow platform, you can automate millions of repetitive tasks in every corner of your business, IT, HR, and more, so your people can focus on the work that they want to do. That's putting AI agents to work for people. It's your turn. Visit servicenow.com.
Yes. Him and my mom met when I was 3 months old at a party.
Okay.
So he knew. The last time I talked to him, actually, I was 19 and told him I was engaged. And the first thing he asked me was I pregnant? He didn't say congratulations. He's just like, are you pregnant? Is that why you're getting married? And that was the last conversation I had with him. So yeah, he knew. He recently came in contact with my sisters again because they had kind of a falling out as well throughout the divorce and high school years. But my one sister, Jamie, just got married like a month ago, actually. And in that process got reconnected with her dad. And he said he felt bad that he never told me throughout my life and, had her pass that message along to me.
Okay.
That he never told me that he wasn't my dad. But yeah, no, he always knew.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify that it wasn't any, I kind of assumed based on the fact that he didn't put his name on your birth certificate and he treated you differently. But, sometimes we hear that maybe raised fathers suspected, but didn't know for sure or that kind of thing. So, okay. So he knew. All right. Now back to your mom reveals that it actually could be 3 different men. How did this brother know that his brother maybe was your biological father? Did your mom inform each of these men?
No, she, my aunt actually got in contact with the brother, and kind of spilled some things out to him then. So then he reached out to find me. So he through Facebook found my aunt, then found my mom, and then found me through that. I spent a few days before I replied to him. I sent a message listen, I know I've known for a while that the guy I thought my dad wasn't my dad. So your brother may be a possibility, but I want to do DNA testing for sure. He's like, yeah, of course. He's like, I don't need, because I already know, but we can do it. So finally get DNA testing against him and his mom, because his brother was no longer alive, so couldn't test him. And through research, the best option was to test his mom. So test him. The test came back that we're not related at all. He doesn't believe it. He's like, well, this is just wrong. It can't be. You have to be his daughter. And I'm like, I'm so sorry. I'm not. And I left at that, deleted on Facebook and moved on. And so then that put me in okay, well then who is? Because before this point, I never thought that my biological dad could not be alive because my mom was 20 when I was born.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was used to having a young parent. So I just always assumed that my biological dad would be alive.
Yeah.
And so then there was a sense of urgency because the one brother, he wasn't alive. So I'm like, well, now I've got to find him.
So you've got 3 possibilities. One has the very common name and you're having trouble finding him. Then you found out about this man who had passed away, you tested, and that's not your biological father. Who was the third?
So the third one, my mom didn't remember his name, but remembered that he was Japanese. I very much do not look Japanese at all.
Okay.
But she didn't know if he was full or half or what. And so that's when I took a 23andMe because I'm like, well, at least that will rule down to one. Either I'm Japanese or I'm not.
Right.
So I send the 23andMe in and comes back that I'm not Japanese, which wasn't a big surprise to me because I'm very much white.
Yeah.
And look that way.
Mm-hmm.
But so that leaves, again, the man with the common name. No close matches pop up. Everyone's 3rd to 5th cousin or farther. And I'm like, well, this doesn't help.
Yeah.
And so I actually found a Facebook group full of search angels. And so I put a post in there and I was like, this is my DNA test. This is my story. Finally got a search angel to take the case. And they're like, okay, well, we want you to do ancestry, DNA, to see if we get closer matches. So I took ancestry, wait another 6 weeks for it to come in, and no close matches there either. Again, only 3rd or 5th cousins. Apparently no one close to me likes to take DNA tests.
Mm.
The lady, took my raw DNA and put it on some other sites and basically built a family tree and narrowed it down and found the man that is my father. She's able to find him and narrow it down to him. And she's like, was this, she's like, send this picture to mom and ask her. So I sent the picture to my mom. She's like, yes, that's the man, that possibility. So we narrowed it to him. But unfortunately with him, he had passed away about 14 months before from cancer.
Oh, wow. I mean, how did you feel when you found that?
It was very difficult because I didn't have a great relationship with my mom. One of the things I dreamed of all those years was finding him and finally having that parent-child relationship I craved so much.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that I was so close, I was just a little over a year off before he passed, it was heartbreaking.
Yeah.
I told my husband, I'm like, the one thing I wanted was at least one meeting with him and to shake his hand, to see him in the eyes, look him in the eyes, and for him to say my name.
Mm.
Like, I would love a relationship, but at least I could have that, that would be okay. And then, in a moment, that was just completely taken away.
I'm so sorry.
I ended up gaining some siblings though. So when we first found him, my search angel was like, it looks like you're in the middle between two other girls. She's like, if you want to reach out, just know this may bring up some issues. And since it being so close to him passing as well, so it's like, okay. But I knew if I didn't reach out, I would regret it because I had already let so much time pass. So, I wrote up my letters. They got them. And his wife actually reached out to me. And she's like, we've known you've been a possibility. Turns out the oldest daughter was hers from a previous relationship.
Okay.
So there was no affair on her.
Mm-hmm.
But turns out he was married when I was conceived, but his wife had been cheating on him for years and wouldn't grant him a divorce. And so finally he got tired of it. He's like, well, I mean, if you're not going to be in this marriage anyways, then I'm not going to either. And he went out of town for work for 2 weeks. Happened to be where my mom was working in the town she was working in. And they actually had a 2-week relationship, not a one-night stand.
Okay.
And then he went back home. Part of his company was still there doing the job. So then the rumor started that my mom was pregnant. And the wife found out. And she's the one who called and threatened custody to my mom.
Mm.
And then she divorced him, but didn't tell him that my mom was pregnant.
Oh, wow.
He had heard rumors years later that my mom had ended up getting pregnant with his child, but he'd never been confirmed. They did try to, find me throughout the years, but I was, born in 89, so there really wasn't much to go on. I had moved around. My mom's last name had obviously changed because she got married. I was in a different state, so it really wasn't. If he wanted to track us down, there was no way to it. Like, we constantly moved.
Mm-hmm.
We're in different states. His wife said, yeah, we tried to find you, but we weren't able to. And so we're not surprised to get your letter, and we're happy to have gotten it. She has been nothing but welcoming, which I feel very blessed because I hear lots of stories of where the wives are just very angry about this child. But she has been nothing but welcoming. She's like, here's all the information I have, health information. He did pass from a cancer that is passed in the family. So me and my kids are working the process of getting tested.
Okay.
Because he passed from it. He believes his dad passed from it and an uncle as well.
Mm.
So it makes it a big possibility that me or my kids could have it or have the gene for it. The oldest sister, which ended up being my stepsister, I now have all these siblings. None of them are full.
Right.
So because my mom's remarried, so I got 2 new siblings in that. So on my mom's side, I have 2 half-sisters, a stepsister, and a stepbrother. And then on my dad's side, I now have a stepsister and a half-sister. Lots of girls.
Yeah. Yeah. How do you feel about the fact that you don't have any, quote, full siblings anymore?
I was okay with it. Like, it didn't hit me. My youngest sister, Terry, when she first found out, it hit her kind of hard. She had made some comments about it when I first found out at almost 18. It was more rough on her. And me and her didn't have a great relationship growing up as a child either. Like, we fought all the time. So, like, now that me and her are close and generally get along, and she adores my kids and my kids adore her, and we talk regular, is a legit surprise to me. Because growing up, I thought that would have never happened. I mean, I thought that pretty much when I graduated high school and moved on with my life, I really wasn't going to have much contact with my immediate family because I was just never close to them growing up. there's always some distance between us.
Have you been able to learn? I mean, I know you learned about the, risk for cancer and things like that, and how he met your mom. But have you learned anything else about your father that maybe surprised you or made you feel connected to him?
I've loved cooking since I was a young age, and I'm really good at it. I actually almost went to culinary school. That was my plan for a long time. But no one on my mom's side cooks. Like me, like my mom doesn't really cook. My sisters don't really like to do it. My grandma didn't like to cook. And so I was always like, well, why am I naturally gifted at this and no one else is? And it turns out he loved to cook. Mm. And, I was making dinner one day and I just reached out to my stepmom, like, hey, did my dad love to cook? And she's like, oh yeah, he loved to cook all the time. And so that, really helped that feeling in me that, okay, that's where I get it from.
Yeah.
Always being the black sheep, not just how you look, but how you act, was always like, why am I the way I am? I used to always be nature versus nurture. I'd always be more nurture. Like, oh, you're like who you're around. Mm-hmm. And then through this whole journey, I'm like, oh no, DNA, your nature plays such a bigger part in who you are and your interests than I ever would have thought.
Yeah. How many of your new family members have you met? Have you gotten to meet a bunch in person?
I have, actually. So I found them all in 2020, of course, which is not the best time to find new family members. Mm-hmm. But my half-sister actually got married this past July. And so I was able to go to Michigan for the wedding. And so I got to meet my dad's siblings and their kids and cousins. So it was really great to meet them. A little overwhelming because I had never been to a wedding where I literally never known anyone.
Yeah.
And they're all like, oh, hi, Sam. You're John's daughter. How are you? And all the names that I cannot put to all the faces because there was just so many. Everyone was really welcoming, which was great. But yeah, I got a good chance to meet most of them.
That's incredible. And that's so awesome that they're so open to you.
Yeah, I've been very lucky, in that the biggest issue that hurdle we had is the distance because I'm back in Tennessee now. Mm-hmm. That's hard where they're all in Michigan to connect with them.
Right.
So I was very thankful to be able to go to the wedding and see everyone in person and meet people.
Oh, that's great. How are things going with your mom?
Not so well. We've always been strained, but even this past year, when I was talking to my sisters about doing this podcast, I'm like, what are your stories? And my one sister, Jamie, she heard the story that my biological dad was my mom's boss. And when he found out he's pregnant, he didn't want anything to do with me or my mom. So that's a whole other person that enters the mix. That was a possibility. My sister Terry heard a deviation of the story of the brother that had passed away. That's the story she had heard back then. So everyone had gotten a different story. But she's claiming that all along, she said it's been John. It could only ever be him. Claiming that pretty much the rest of us are lying about the different stories that we have, or my husband's lying that, after that phone conversation with her. And so it's just been really strained. I've actually earlier this year stopped being the one to put the first effort in communication with them, because I would try to put communication with my mom, talk to her, video chat with the kids and everything. And when I stopped being the one doing it first, reaching out, no messages have been had. And so she's complained to my sisters that, I don't get to talk to my grandchildren as much. Sam's just keeping them away from me. And it's like, no, I just stopped being the one to reach out first. Yeah. It's pretty much non-existent at this point. I did see her, Jamie got married as well about a month after my sister and my dad's side got married. So there were 2 weddings in Michigan I had to go for. I saw her then and, she said hi and hugged me and she loved me. And that was about the conversation I had with her the whole weekend there for the wedding.
Do you have any questions for her?
Not at this point, because if I did have any questions for her, I don't feel she would tell me the truth. And I don't feel like I could get the truth out of her. So I wouldn't believe any answers that she gave me.
Where would you say that you are in your journey currently?
I'm actually doing a lot better. It wasn't until like the past 3 or 4 months that I actually found the NPE community and got that term, So for the longest time, all those years, I just felt so alone because I didn't have anyone who could relate to my story or have anything remotely similar. And finding the community has helped so much in healing in that, and just having basic terminology for the different people and players in the story, you know?
Yeah.
Because for the longest time, I didn't know what to call my race dad. You know, what do I call him versus what do I call my, you know, biological dad, and what do I even label myself as? And, you know, having those labels and reaching out to the community has been so helpful in healing in that, to make me feel that I'm not alone in this, and to help heal past some of the hurt that is coming from missing out on a life completely, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, right? Because NPEs have always happened, but because there wasn't DNA testing so prominently and things like that, the community wasn't as popular. When you were going through this before learning about NPE, how did you work through the fact that you found out at 17 that your, you know, dad wasn't your dad? What did you do before you found the community?
The most part, I just dealt with it internally. Because, you know, I mean, I told my husband and talked to him a lot about it, but he, of course, had no way of really understanding what I was feeling. And I had talked to a few people throughout the years, very minimal, like less than 5. And again, no one understood. And so I would try searching online for any sort of group or anyone to understand what I was going through, and could never find anything.
And how did you find the NPE community recently? What spawned that search?
I was actually on Instagram one day watching reels, and this lady had posted a reel. She titled "What the Heck Wednesday," because she had found out through a DNA test that her dad wasn't her dad. And so each Wednesday she'd post more of the story. And so I'm like, okay, she was actually the first person I followed on Instagram that I didn't know and wasn't a certified, you know, account.
Right.
Because typically if I don't know you and you're not a certified account, I'm not going to follow you. I felt like that was a little weird, but saw her reel, I'm like, okay, no, I have to follow this. I have to know more about the story. And she actually, one time in her stories, shared something to DNA Search Angels or some other Instagram page. And I followed that link. And then really they started sharing other resources. I'm like, oh, there's a bunch of us.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's how I got connected to the group.
Yeah. I mean, thank goodness for the internet, right? Because I don't think any of us would realize how common this is, that there's terminology for it, like you said, and really just we're not alone. And there's support resources for going through this. Yeah,
that's been so beneficial to find out there's other people out there and the resources understand a lot of the big feelings you're feeling and not feel like you're completely crazy for feeling them.
Yes.
Or even a bad child for feeling them. You know, sometimes I'd feel like, oh, I'm such a bad child for feeling this. Even though my mom and I don't have this great relationship or really any, I still feel horrible for feeling the feelings.
Yeah. What are some of the feelings that you're talking about?
There's been lots of anger throughout the years. You know, anger that she didn't tell me. You know, she kept this huge part of me missing. Even seeing that me and my raised dad didn't have a great relationship. There would be times when he'd be really hard on me and just, it would just been rough days. And in the middle of the night, she would sneak in like a little trinket or present. And I, you know, looking back at it, it feels like it was always out of guilt, you know, because he'd been particularly mean to me those days and hard on me. And so she would, you know, give me a little something out of guilt for that. He was mean to my sisters at times as well. You know, he has his own trauma that he's dealt with his own life. And that's just how he's reacted and everything. But it was a lot worse with me. And so those little trinkets I felt like my mom gave out of guilt. And then I was like, well, if you knew he wasn't my dad, why would you let me spend all those years feeling the way I feel, you know, and feeling excluded and, you know, have the low self-esteem I did because of that relationship with him. A lot of it was anger towards her. But then I would always like, well, she's my only parent, so I can't let go. So I would stay and continue to try to strive for the relationship with her, even though that wasn't reciprocated. it really was until recently, like, I can be okay if I walk away from my relationship with her, you know?
Mm-hmm.
One thing that I've been thinking about, which I know has been brought up on your podcast and other podcasts throughout this, is something that like DNA testing groups can do to help us in the situation. Maybe 2 weeks after you get your results, they're like, hey, did you find anything surprising? And then, you know, whether it's an ethnicity or it's a family member you didn't know you belonged to, that then they can link you to support group. Because, I mean, the support groups have been so helpful for me in my journey that if I would have found them years ago, how much better, you know, would that have been than now?
Yeah, there's a big question around that, right? How much responsibility do the DNA testing companies have? You know, obviously they aren't the ones that lied or withheld information, but do they have some corporate responsibility? I think that's a great idea to just send a follow-up and make it a little bit more prominent for people that are going through this, because it really does throw people into crisis, right? What advice would you offer a parent who's keeping a DNA surprise from their child?
You've got to share it with them. And if you share it for them while they're still under your roof and they're still young, you can work through this journey with them, where when they're older and they're out of your house and they try to work through this journey, it gets much harder to have a connection with you because there's that distrust automatically and you're not there day in and day out to see them through this process. So you just share it with them. The younger, the better is what I personally believe, because they deserve to know, and it would help them out and you out so much the sooner this journey gets started.
What advice would you offer someone who just uncovered a DNA surprise?
You know, take a moment, take a deep breath, get a grasp on what you're feeling. And if there's any part of you that wants to find this parent or family member, then I'm under the belief, go forward as soon as you can. I mean, I wasted all those years not searching as hard as I could. Not that there was much resources to search any harder than I could.
Yeah.
And then it became too late. So if there's any hope that you want a chance to meet them, you've got to work towards it and find help. I mean, you're not alone in this journey. There's people out there that can help you and that can understand the DNA and family trees, even if you have no clue. Because when I got my 23andMe, I had no clue what a CM meant.
Right.
I'm like, I don't know what this means.
Right. We become unofficial experts in all things DNA through this, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Sam, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and sharing your story. Again, I'm so sorry that you weren't able to connect with your biological father, but I'm so happy that his family has welcomed you with open arms, and I hope that relationship continues to grow.
Thank you so much. Me too. I was actually just talking to my new sister last night, and we're making a plan for her and her husband to come visit us in Tennessee, and then me in February to go visit them for some time. So I'm excited to see where it goes.
And now, here's an update from Sam. Really excited to reconnect with you, Sam, and hear more about how things have been going. It's been some time since we last spoke, I think around 6 months or so. What's new?
In February, I got to travel to Michigan, which is where my new family's at, and my old family actually too. Everyone's there. And I got to spend a week staying with my stepmom and getting to connect with her and my new half-sister. I went by myself, no husband, no kids, just be able to connect with them and get to know them some more.
Wow. What was that like to see them in person?
It was good. It was really good. I was a little nervous, but I fit in really well. We had a great time. I told my husband it was kind of weird because I had never been with family and not felt like an outsider before and just instantly fit in with them. So that was a weird experience considering I'm in my 30s and that's the first time that's happened. There were some points at sometimes in the night when I was by myself that I would get like really frustrated and sad. I loved hearing all the stories about my dad and getting to know him through, everyone else since I can't meet him, but also realizing that I will never be part of any of those stories at the same time. And so at points it got a little overwhelming, and I was, thankfully I had my own room I could stay in. So at night I could process everything.
Yeah. Where have you landed? I mean, we're now talking, it's March 15th. This episode's going to air on Tuesday, March 21st. Where have you landed with those emotions about not, being part of the memories with your dad?
At times it's very sad and I wish I could be a part of, but my stepmom told me a story that he actually did. He was on a work trip when he met my mom. He was there for a few weeks working. Mm-hmm. And once he had kind of heard the rumors and settled out and figured out that, yes, my mom was in fact pregnant, he actually went back to my hometown to look for her and try to see, figure everything out. She, of course, has moved at that point because my mom had met my raised dad when I was 3 months old. By the time I was 18 months, we were living in North Carolina and she was married and about to have my sister, Jamie. So we were long gone by the time he came back, but it was good feeling knowing that he actually did come and try to find me and my mom and figure all this out. So that really gave me a peace knowing that, he cared and wanted to try to do what he could.
That's amazing. So that was new information for you to hear.
It
that.
Was. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Did you learn anything else new that, I know you mentioned some of these memories, but did you learn anything new that maybe told you more about yourself?
Yeah, there's me and my new half sister. It's really funny. Not only do we look alike, we have almost the exact same personality. It's quite shocking. And then I'm like, that's where all this comes from. All these little quirks, my personality and everything come from that side of the family.
That's amazing.
My husband, he has a story about his great-grandparents had migrated over here from Ireland. And I had always loved that his family was so close from migrating over here. Well, it turns out I have the same story on my dad's side. His parents, his grandparents, my great-grandparents, came over from Poland. And they actually never learned to speak English. So it's, I have the similar side of that. So I'm exploring more of that Polish side since that is such a huge connection in there now.
Yeah, yeah. So it sounds like your visit brought you closer to that side of your family.
Oh, most definitely.
What is next? What are you planning? Any future visits? Are your kids going to meet them? What does the future look like?
We're trying to plan some more visits and see them. I told my husband I at least want to, if we can, at least once a year, be able to go up there by myself and see them. But my sister's husband, actually, he travels a lot for work and is in Kentucky. So not too far from me. She'll occasionally come on the weekends and everything. So she's like, hey, if I ever come down, let's meet up. Which is a lot closer than northern Michigan to where I am. Mm-hmm. And just, we talk really regularly now, multiple times a week and everything, and just really close to that family. My kids are really excited. They want to go up there and meet them and want to be a part of everything too. I was really nervous the entire drive. So from my house all the way up there, it's about 13, almost 14 hours. I have one sister that's a little lower part of Michigan, so I stopped and slept at her house because that's a long drive to do by herself.
Yeah.
But I was so nervous the entire time. I'm like, what if they don't like me? What if this goes terrible? Then I'm stuck up here. What do I do?
Yeah. So take us through, what happened? So you got there, you slept at one sister's house. And then was this a newfound sister?
No. So this is a sister I grew up with. Okay.
Yeah. So you stopped at your sister's house and then you make your way up to your newfound family. What happens?
So I pull in the driveway. At first, I don't know if I'm in the right place because she lives in a really small town in northern Michigan and there's snow everywhere because that's how it is up there. And I'm like, okay, I text her, I'm like, I think I'm here. And my stepmom comes out. She's like, oh yeah, here we go. And so got to see them. I went to dinner with her, my sister and her husband because they live, not too far from up there. And, just hung out there for the week and spent the week with them, hearing stories. I got some mementos of my dad's that my stepmom had pulled aside for me to give me.
And what does your family think of all this? Does everyone know that you went up? Well, obviously your sister, but yeah.
My one sister that I stayed with was it.
Okay.
She's been really accepting of the entire process, really wanting me to explore that. My newfound half sister wants to meet her as well, just because she knows how important and close we are. I didn't tell my mom because I knew my mom would get probably pretty angry and then start complaining to everyone, like, I don't know why she needs to find her new family. I don't know why she needs to be part of this. And I just wanted to go there and get to know them without having any of that guilt or conscience on me.
Mm-hmm. Does she know now?
She doesn't.
Okay.
We don't, our relationship's pretty surface level. I mean, we talk about my kids, but that's about it. She'll text or call every now and then, or send a Marco Polo to check up on my kids, but it's very infrequent. Like, I just talked to her last week, and that was the first time since my daughter's birthday, which is the beginning of January.
Okay. Do you see your stepmother as a motherly figure to you now?
I do, actually. My kids have started calling her Grandma April. She bought them a few little gifts while we're up there and everything, because I told my husband, like, she's what every NPE wants from the wife of their dad.
Yeah.
You know, she's like, my biggest concern is that you're not hurt in this process and your kids aren't hurt. And she's like, so we can do this at your pace, what a relationship looks like for you, because I don't want anyone to get hurt in this. And she's like, and if your dad was alive and him and your mom were fighting, I would, let them both know that it's not about you guys. This is about her. You guys made your decision, when she was born. And now it's about her. And we're going to do what's best for her. And so she's just been really, really wonderful in all this.
Oh, yes, she sounds like exactly what everyone wants from the wife.
Yeah.
From the wife when we find our biological fathers. Can you speak more about how this part of your journey has helped you find peace or progress in your story?
For me, it's definitely had some closure getting to know them more and more in detail, because it's been hard to do that because we do live so far away. And I did find them in the beginning of COVID, which didn't make it any easier.
Yeah.
And so it's definitely healed pieces and given me answers that I just wondered. I mean, I'm always going to have questions because he's not alive. But it's definitely given me a closeness with them and a peace in that, the situation isn't ideal. And like I told my stepmom, is like, I can't change what happened in the past, but I can change the future. And I can be involved in your guys' life now that I know there is people to be involved with. I have officially joined therapy. My therapist didn't know the term NPE or any of that, but she's done amazing research on it since learning it and trying to understand what's going on there. So very thankful for her. And she's helped me process a lot of that, which has been great. I'm getting more involved in trying to in the DNA community, actually not just sitting in the groups watching, but actually engaging in them. Coming to the retreat, really excited about that. Just connecting with other people who share the same story. And I'm learning that's very helpful and healing to share stories, but also hear other people's stories as well, who understand what you're going through. And it takes that feeling of loneliness away and out of it.
Well, Sam, thank you for coming back on the podcast to share an update. I'm so happy to hear that things are continuing to move positively as you build new relationships. And I can't wait to meet you in person in May.
I'm looking forward to it. Thanks for having me.
Thanks again to Sam for sharing her story. And thank you to everyone who joined me for season 4. Natalie, Robin, Shannon, Phil, Laurie, Debra, Scarlett, Kim, Allie, Stacy, Angie, and Sam. Your bravery in sharing your stories helps others feel less alone, including me. That's all for season 4, but we'll be back in May with season 5. If you have a DNA surprise story that you'd like to share, please email dnasurprises@gmail.com. And if you haven't yet, please rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Thank you for listening. Until next time.